Edmonton Centre.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise virtually in the House today to speak to Bill C-14, a second act respecting certain measures in response to COVID-19. Before I get into the specifics of this bill and economic recovery, we must all recognize that there's no feasible way that we as a country can make any kind of significant recovery efforts without addressing and conquering this health crisis. Small businesses will continue to flounder until they are their doors. New graduates who once looked towards the future with optimism continue to send in job applications with no response. Single parent households will continue to struggle, trying to make ends meet with a $2,000 government check they receive that's meant to justify the fact that they can't return to work and provide for their children. Now, Madam Speaker, I can't believe I'm saying this, but currently Canada ranks far below our international peers in per capita full vaccinations. Last week, Canada made headlines worldwide in the most embarrassing way when CNN reported that we're outpacing the USA for COVID infections. Canada's behind all kinds of countries in vaccinations. Canadians need to be using all the tools available to fight COVID-19. Now, we need vaccines, we need rapid tests, and we need the information to secure our future and rebuild our economy. Conservatives want to see the Liberals succeed in securing these tools for Canadians, especially the vaccines. But the Liberals failed to secure made-in-Canada vaccines until the end of 2021. For the rest of 2021, Canada's vaccine rollout will be at the whims of foreign countries and companies. It's clear the Liberal government were late in ramping up on vaccine manufacturing. Canadians deserve better than this. But why did the Liberal government wait so long to act? Why did it decide to partner with China? We are so frustrated that the government's failure to secure and get vaccines to Canadians. We cannot secure jobs and cannot secure our economy until we see Canadians vaccinated. The singular focus on this government at this point in time shouldn't be on buyback programs or small infrastructure projects. It should be all hands on deck to procure vaccines they failed to deliver to Canadians so we can get back to normal like the rest of the world is heading towards. The US, the country right next door, recognized the importance of vaccines and therapeutics early on, investing $20.5 billion for their development. The US earlier this month moved the country's active travel advisory for Canada to very high. Now, I appreciate this government's current interest in this area. It is unfortunate it comes at such a late stage in the game. Supporting individuals and businesses in the way they currently are, while important, it's not sustainable. We have to have strategies and a plan to protect those who are compromised and get the economy back on track. Now, Bill C-14 was the government's attempt during the fall economic statement to put forward a plan for Canadians that would instill hope and confidence in this country's ability to recover. But as poorly as this government's vaccine plan panned out, I fear equally that the economy will recover will yield results nearly as dismal. Just as my Conservative colleagues voted in favor in providing assistance Canadians early on in the pandemic, of course, we continue to recognize the need for assistance in these unprecedented times. So C-14 has introduced some temporary and immediate support for low and middle income families who are entitled to the Canada Child Benefit, easing the burden of student debt to 1.4 million Canadians by eliminating the interest on repayment of the federal portion of the Canada Student Loans and Canada Apprentice Loans for up to a year, and providing funding for part of the new Safe Long-Term Care Fund to provide support to long-term facilities. Critical, very important. Up to $262 million for COVID initiatives, including testing, research, countermeasures, vaccine funding, developments, border and travel measures, all worthy. Formally providing that an expense such as rent can qualify as eligible expense under the Canada Emergency Rent Subsidy when it becomes due, so businesses can access the subsidy before the expense is actually paid. Now, with the dramatic increase in the amount that this bill dictates the government can borrow, more than $700 billion, with $100 billion discretionary, one would assume that this would carve out a path for Canadians to get back to work. But as mentioned before, any attempt to recover will be thwarted unless we can get vaccines into Canadians' arms. Only then can we meaningfully talk about recovery. Like my colleague, the member from Carleton, passionately reminds us, it is the dignity that comes with earning a paycheck. It's the freedom that comes with the ability to control one's own finances. And at the moment, Canadians are experiencing joblessness worse than the G7 average. This gives me absolutely no confidence that offering another $100 billion in discretionary spending will yield any type of meaningful result. Now, although we experience recent job growth, there is no doubt again that those jobs created will be lost again because of the shutdowns, because of the COVID-19 variants. We need a plan to come out of COVID to create jobs and get our economy back on track. And we cannot allow that can't happen without people earning paychecks. We cannot permanently put our economy on the national credit card. Our jobs will provide Canadians with personal financial security. Jobs afford families good childcare, housing, post-secondary schooling, nutrition, and recreation. Jobs provide tax revenue, reduce government debt burden, and protect our cherished social net. Integral to our build back, but equally important to sustain our country's growth, are two metrics that have been falling over the past few years: Canadian competitiveness and Canadian innovation. Now, with a country of our size and sparsity of population, there's no way we can rely on just our internal economy to lead us to recovery. Canada's going to need massive growth in exports to fuel any kind of recovery and provide the capacity to repay our enormous debt. Spending in infrastructure should be predominantly focused on those things that improve productivity, competitiveness, and access to markets. Private sector innovation is what is going to lead us into the future and provide us with the technology we need to both shift to global sustainability and reinstate ourselves as a world economic leader. In the government's C-14 bill, there is no mention of the resource sector, which is Canada's #1 export, nor did they recognize the importance of this sector for our recovery. The world wants and needs more of our natural resources, and we should be thinking about how we can expand our market share instead of hastening its decline. With the abundance of natural resources we've been blessed with, we've been handed the keys to the castle. At least we could do is plan for lessening our dependence on foreign supply because we have it all right here. So we fell out of the top 10 ranking for the most competitive economies. We've fallen near the bottom of our peer group on innovation, ranking 17th. In 2019, mineral fuels, including oil, accounted for 22% of our country's total exports, #1 exported product, and we have the third largest reserves. And we have enormous potential in minerals, agriculture, forestry, pulp, and paper. My colleague, the member of Abbotsford, offered 8 specific recommendations to help drive the economy and get people back to work. Well, here's 5 more for free. The government could fast-track decisions on the $14 billion LNG gas project in Quebec on top of another $6 billion in similar projects waiting for sign-off across Canada. Speed up approval for job-creating projects, large and small. OECD ranks Canada 34th out of 35 OECD countries in the amount of time it takes to obtain a permit for a general construction project. All 3 levels of government must commit to provide the world's fastest permits for factories, shopping centers, parks, mines, and more. Canada should be the place to build projects. Ensure infrastructure is targeted towards productivity and competitiveness, and unlock the innovation and technology sector. Quantity and quality of R&D, IP protection and strength, immigration policies that attract talent, and make sure that we support these industries that desperately need more people. And repeal the tanker ban in the West Coast, a project that had Indigenous backing and would have opened up the Asia market. Madam Speaker, at the end of the day, this government has an entire toolbox of tools at their disposal. They have a spending account in excess of $700 billion. They have access to the most educated population on the planet. They have more land than they know what to do with, resource potential beyond compare. They have absolutely everything they need to get this country well on its way to recovery, just like other countries with much less have done. We can all bounce back if they so wish. The question will be whether they want Canadians to emerge from this pandemic reliant on their government receiving checks from the state each month, or whether they want Canadians to emerge resilient thanks to their government and their strategic steps they took able to rebuild from this tragedy with a newfound sense of strength and pride in both themselves individually and the will of the country. Thank you.